This is the story of Elizabeth Bathory, or as some would come to call her, the bloodthirsty Countess. Born to George and Anna Báthory in August 1560, Countess Elizabeth Bathory came from one of the wealthiest families in Hungary. Of course, all families have their secrets, and Elizabeth's had more than their fair share. One uncle was allegedly a devil worshipper, and an aunt was believed to be a witch. So when Elizabeth herself started acting a bit odd and suffering from violent, uncontrollable fits of rage, no one really thought too much about it. At age 15, with no sign of her fits subsiding, Elizabeth married Ferenc Nadasdy and moved into his castle. By most accounts, the castle's dungeon gave Báthory her first opportunities to experiment with torture. With her husband gone for long periods of time, she apparently began experimenting with black magic, often inviting people to the castle to take part in strange, sadistic rituals. Legend has it that during this time, in a fit of rage, Báthory slapped a young servant girl across the face, drawing blood. Allegedly, Báthory looked down at her hand, which was covered in the young girl's blood, and thought the blood was causing her own skin to glow. This, according to legend, is why Báthory believed that the blood of virginal girls would keep her young forever. In 1604, Nadasdy died, leaving Báthory alone in the castle. For a while, she traveled abroad and, by all accounts, continued her quest to fulfill her insatiable thirst for blood. But she eventually returned and purchased her own castle. Shortly thereafter, servant girls and young girls from the neighboring villages began disappearing in the middle of the night, never to be heard from again. During this time period, villagers knew better than to speak out against nobility. So when people started implying that the Countess was kidnapping young girls and murdering them in her castle, the villagers kept their mouths shut. Even when Báthory's carriage would ride through town late at night with young girls in the back, villagers still kept their heads down and went about their business. Villagers were often awakened in the middle of the night by the sound of piercing screams coming from Báthory's castle. However, it wasn't until young aristocratic girls began disappearing that the decision was made to investigate. By that time, though, hundreds of young girls had already gone missing. In December 1610, King Matthias II of Hungary sent a group of men out to Báthory's castle to investigate claims that local girls were being held there against their will. Heading up the group was a man named Georgi Thurzo. It would be a subsequent testimony of what the group encountered that would bring the full weight of the court down on Báthory. Thurzo later stated that when the group arrived at the castle, the things they found inside were so horrific and gruesome that he could not bring himself to write them down. Thurzo said that inside the door they found a young girl, dead and apparently drained of blood. A short distance away they found another girl, alive but near death. She also appeared to have lost a large amount of blood. Advancing down into the dungeon, the group encountered several young girls who were being held captive. The group released them and then began the search for Báthory herself. In the end, Báthory and 4 of her servants were taken into custody. The servants were taken into the village for questioning, while Báthory herself was confined to her bedroom in the castle. 21 judges presided over the proceedings that began on January 2, 1611. Báthory remained in her castle while her 4 accomplices were questioned. The things these 4 individuals claimed took place in the castle were almost too horrific to describe. One of Báthory's employees, a dwarf named Visco, said that he personally knew of at least 37 girls that the Countess had killed. Báthory's childhood nurse, Alana Jew, stated that she had personally helped Báthory kill somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 girls, using such horrific devices as cages filled with spikes, fire pokers, and oily sheets that were placed between the victim's legs and set on fire. As the proceedings went on, the descriptions got worse and worse. Stabbings with needles and scissors, tearing off limbs, and even sewing girls' mouths shut. It is also made known that the Countess enjoyed whipping and beating young girls until their bodies were swollen, at which point she would use a razor to draw blood from the swollen areas. There were even rumors that she bathed in the blood of the girls in an attempt to stay young. In the end, the Countess was found guilty of killing 80 girls. However, based on the number of bodies eventually recovered at the castle, the body count is probably as high as 650. All 4 of Báthory's accomplices were put to death, but because the Countess was a member of the nobility, she could not be executed for her crimes. Instead, she was moved to a series of small rooms in her castle and walled inside. All the doors and windows were sealed, and only a few small holes for air and one to allow food to pass through. The Countess lived in her own private prison for 3 years before she died, still claiming she was innocent of all charges.